Ladies and gentlemen. This is one of the best online station in Kenya and of course globally called the Deepex TV, where we cure your boredom, motivational talk, inspirational talk, and of course we always bring some intriguous conversation. Like today, I don't know if it's motivational or inspirational or it's we'll just know. My name is Brian Ogoma and this is Deepex TV. We always say that you subscribe, you follow, you like, and you share. Today we are at in the you said I have to use the University of Nairobi, the international university, and I'm with one of the students, and of course I will tell us who he is and whatever they are planning to do or whatever they are always doing about the state of the nation, of the country. How can we fix it? How can we fix it? You know, the Gen Z movement came last year, and again they were fighting for the economical liberation. Now let's see where it started and how it will end. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Just tell us your name, the department you are, whatever you are always doing.
Okay, my name is Victor Orwa. I am an alumnus of this university. I graduated here when I was doing my undergrad degree. And for purposes of this conversation, I'm also a postgraduate student. So most importantly, I'm a member of People's Assembly, which is known as Bunge la Mwananchi. And I come from Kamkunji, Kibra, Bunge la Mwananchi.
Before we go to the Bunge la Wananchi, you said that you are a former student of this institution. Were you among the student council by that time, or you were just a student here?
Well, I wasn't a member of the student council then, but I participated in SONU elections. I was a candidate at some point. I wanted to be a member of the SONU's executive council. And I was actively involved also in campaigning for the progressive forces. So to that extent, that was the extent to which I was part of the students organization. However, there is a rider. We formed something called the Kenya Students Law Association, which was a caucus bringing together all law students in Kenya. Our president was Michael Opondo from Kenyatta University, and I was the director of Kenya Law Student Association, representing the University of Nairobi then. And I remember we also had something called the Kenya Legal, which was an online newspaper, which was being published on a weekly basis, basically speaking to the questions of contemporary matters. And other than that, also, I was also involved. We had several associations. One of them was called Kenya, Mooting Society. So I was also a member of the Mooting Society, being one of, at some point, serving as a secretary of the Mooting Society. And that is it, insofar as students related matters are concerned.
Let's assume that you are a member of the student council by that time. What change will you bring to the institution or to the entire global of the students association in Kenya?
Well, first of all, it speaks to the question of freedom, very fundamental to students. You give them enough space to do what they want, so long as whatever they're doing or saying falls within the confines of law. Then number two, you give students financial independence, because as you understand, students normally subscribe periodic fees to the respective student bodies. So if I were to lead students council, one of the things I would propagate is to actually entrust the entire students fraternity with the management and even disbursement of funds insofar as the students' subscription fee is concerned. And of course, to expand it a bit further and give them a more liberal space to conduct their small informal businesses which are colloquially known as the side hustles. So I think those would speak to the question of addressing their needs.
Okay, thank you so much. Victor Oroa is here, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. Many things are here to be discussed. You said he's a member of Bunge la Wananchi Kamkunji Kibra. Okay, Bunge la Wananchi Kamkunji Kibra. Now, I want to talk about the state of the nation. You know, before we talk about the Kenyan politics, either the African Union politics or the entire world politics, there's a movement you people are trying to rise in the country. Just explain, or not in a brief, just explain us to us whatever you want to fight for as in the independence of this country.
Okay, thank you very much. Political history of Kenya tells us that every generation has a calling, and in every generation there is always a movement. For instance, during the times of our forefathers and foremothers, we had the clamor for self-rule, what some people call political autonomy. And as you can recall, some of the luminaries then were our great heroes like Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. Then post-independence, we had second liberation. We had a number of clamor for constitutional changes when Kenya had been turned first into a de facto one-party state and later to a de jure one-party state. So in late 1970s and at the commencement of 1980s, then very young Kenyans, I remember in 1975, the person who served as Kenya's second prime minister addressed his first press conference in 1975, asking the first president, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, to release his father Jaramogi Oginga Odinga from prison. That was none other than His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga. And then fast forward 1982, we had the abortive coup, which was all centered around the main effort and synergy to try and free Kenya from the shackle of imperialism and autocracy. So moving forward all to 1990, we had a movement which started as a pressure group known as a Forum for Restoration of Democracy, which later culminated into a political party immediately after the repeal of Section 2A. And this particular movement was led by Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, His Excellency, as the figurehead, and around him were very energetic, versatile, and innovative young Kenyans. The foremost being his son, Raila Amolo Odinga. We had James Orengo, we had Joager, we had Professor Nyo, and then Paul Muita later joined. So those were dubbed as the Young Turks, and they're the people who pushed Kenya out of the bondage of a single-party dictatorship into a multi-party democracy. And as you can recall, the day Jaramogi was going to register for Kenya, it was estimated that a minimum of 200,000 people accompanied him to register the party. So that was the second liberation. Now, the second liberation now had, the vision of expanding democracy and, of course, democratizing institutions. But as it were, because of, political self-interest, which were differing then, we also had polarization along, personal interest, personal ambitions, and even tribal inclinations. The original Ford disintegrated into Ford Kenya, led by Jaramogi, Ford Asili, led by Kenneth Ndinjo Matiba. Then we had even Ford people, and of course, Mwai Kibaki went to DP. So in 1992 elections, votes were split. And if you add Jaramogi's votes to Kibaki's, those were enough to take Moi home. So between 1992 to 1997, we had a lot of pressure groups. One, we had the Ufungamano, which was bringing together civil societies, churches. We also, I remember people like, the then Secretary General of Kenya, Council of Churches, the Council of Churches of Kenya, called Reverend Mutava Musimi. We had people like Professor Kivuta Kibwana. We had people like Professor Wangari Maathai. We had several people like Timothy Njoya, and so on. So they came together and they now started piling pressure on now the credibility of elections, because many people felt that the 1992 elections were bungled unimaginably. So based on the pressure they piled, it gave birth to something called IPPG, which was known as the Inter-Party Parliamentary Group, which basically advocated for minimum electoral reforms ahead of the 1997 elections. And of course, after that, the minimum reforms were achieved. But again, the 1997 elections did not realize the Kenyan dream because the opposition forces were again split. Come 2002 elections, with the Babas making Kibaki Tosha declaration, we got NAC regime into power. Some of the fundamental promises then, one was to give us a new constitution within 100 days, give us 500,000 jobs yearly, give us free education, but most importantly, eradicate the vice and cancer of corruption once and for all. A few of the pledges, according to their manifesto, were achieved, but many were thrown under the back burner. So the NAC dream betrayed, the NAC government under Kibaki betrayed the Kenyan dream, because first it didn't stick to the dictates and the principles of the Memorandum of Understanding between NAK, that is National Alliance Party of Kenya, bringing together Mwai Kibaki, the late Kijana Wamalwa, and Madam Charity Ngilu on one hand, and the Liberal Democratic Party, bringing Raila Amolo Odinga and the faction with whom he defected from KANU, which ought to have made him the Prime Minister. So we didn't get the constitution. And when we went to Bomas of Kenya, a fundamental argument, which was an irreducible minimum for the LDP wing, was to have a new constitution with a stronger devolved system. Because what used to happen then was that centralization of the system of governance, we had what we call a unitary system of government, where everything was based in Nairobi. So President Moi used to capitalize on wastages and pilferages of resources to focus more on funds drives, following on the spirits of Harambe. So it was Raila's thinking that if we decentralize money to the villages, then it is the easiest route of achieving a rapid economic development. So the question of devolution was at the heart of Raila Odinga and the LDP wing. So when we were at the Bomas of Kenya in the year 2005, the chairperson of the devolution committee, the late Dr. Odhiambo Mbai, who was actually a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, spoke passionately about the principles, context, and concept of devolution. And everyone stood and clapped for him. He was a delegate, by the way. So, and unanimously, people proposed him to be the chairperson of the devolution committee based on his finest understanding of the concept of devolution. So, some few days later, he was murdered in cold blood. And then the Bomas draft, which was a beautiful draft advocating for inclusivity, a liberal and free society, was now watered down. Before it was watered down, the government wing, the other wing of the government, that was, Kijana Wamalwa died sometimes in 2003. So Ankumude Wuri was appointed as the vice president. But Ankumude Wuri was from the LDP wing. However, when he was appointed the vice president, he was compromised. So he was the one who was actually representing the NAK wing of government at the Bomas. So he led a walkout when the discussion was strong about devolution. But the Raila wing of LDP remained. So it gave us something called the Bomas draft, which would have given us an executive prime minister and a disbursed, a shared executive power. So Raila team stuck, and then these people retreated. The NAK wing retreated to Kilifi, and they watered down the Bomas draft into what was known as Kilifi or Wako draft. So because of that, in between, they also went to court. But because of that, fast forward, we went to a referendum. Orange versus banana. Orange for no, banana for yes. Orange, which gave us the Orange Democratic Movement. That orange momentum developed, first morphed into a political pressure group, which had swept the hearts and souls of Kenyans. And it was on that basis that Raila Amolo Odinga gave Kenyans another optimism of a better Kenya in 2007 elections, an election that all and sundry agree that Raila Amolo Odinga won fairly and squarely. So of course the elections were rigged, because in day one Raila had led by by a margin of 1.5 million. And because of that, we had mediators coming. The first to come was Jendai Fraser from the United States of America. Then after Jendai Fraser came Condoleezza Rice. But before Condoleezza Rice came, there was then the president of Ghana, President John Kufuor, who also came to try and mediate. We also had South African businessman then, Cyril Matarela Ramaphosa, the current president, who came. But the PNU wing rejected him, arguing that to Raila, and he was actually one of the people who bankrolled Raila. And of course, in between, former head of states of Africa came. We had former Mozambique president Joaquim Chissano, among others. Fast forward, Condoleezza Rice came. We had a panel of eminent persons, which was constituted, led by the late Dr. Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General. It brought together African eminent persons, like the former Tanzanian president, Benjamin William Mkapa, among others. So we ended up with the Serena talks, with ODM wing, led by Musalia Mudavadi, William Ruto, James Orengo, Dr. Sally Kosgei, and we had Karoli Omondi. The other wing, we had Martha Karua, we had Mutula Kilonzo, and we had Professor Sam Mungeri, among others. So because of that, we ended up with what we call a national accord. Okay, so national accord created an act, and that act now created the position of prime minister with 2 deputies. So we shared power in half.
Okay, thank you. You know, if you are traveling somewhere, you have to know where you are coming from. That's why my brother Victor Orwa is giving us a slight history of different liberation that we have in this country of Kenya. The 2 of them, we talked about multipartyism, we talked about the independence, and now we are still coming. We are just still coming until we will reach to the economical liberation. Now, talking of now new constitution, from new constitution, the things like devolution came and other things. What can you say about it?
Well, I could say many, but I'll just pick a few. One, devolution is the best thing that happened to Kenyans under the 2010 constitutional dispensation for 2 major reasons. One, the concept of devolution in itself means 2 things. One, you devolve power to the lowest unit of the society. Then number 2, you devolve resources to the lowest unit of society, meaning that the last person at the village can access a leadership there and resources there. So that is the beauty of devolution. It takes a substantial chunk of resources which was lying idle in Nairobi to somewhere in Kapedo, to somewhere in Todonyang, to somewhere in Wotorumo, to somewhere in Wagoso, in Bondo constituency. That is the bit. However, the negative aspect of devolution is that those who have been privileged and honored to wield the trappings of power, insofar as the devolved governance is concerned, have not understood the context and the conceptual, application of devolution. And to that extent, many people have not felt the impact of devolution. For instance, it is argued that one, that Kenya is a small country, some people argue, and it has a bloated representation. Someone will tell you that United States of America has about 50 states or thereabout, and it has 50 governors thereabout for that matter. So meaning a state in United States of America is equivalent to a country called Kenya. So someone is asking, why would a developing country like Kenya have 47 counties which are mirroring almost the 50 states in United States of America? So people are arguing that even the money which is being devolved from the consolidated fund, a bigger percentage normally ends up in recurrent expenditure because of the bloated workforce, and then the little which remains ends up in pilferages, being swindled, being embezzled, and of course wanton theft and corruption. So most people would pinpoint to you what the Constituency Development Fund has done since the introduction of CDF in 2003, but they will be at pains to show you what devolution has done in many of the counties. But as an Afro optimist like Baba, I choose to look at the glass as half full and not half empty, meaning I choose to look at the positive aspects of it. So instead of castigating what devolution has not done, or instead of complaining and lamenting on what ought to have done, what I'm trying to view is that there is something which, if done, then can make the impact of devolution to be felt so visibly and strongly at the grassroots level.
Thank you so much. Victor Rua, now, from the first liberation during the independence up to date, do you see that there is an totally independence in Kenya? Or there's something that the government and the people of Kenya should communicate on?
Well, there isn't absolute independence. There is a political philosophy or theory of something known as neo-colonialism.
When you talk about in the political philosophy and the independence, you gave us just a slight history how Kenya started there, the liberation that came, they won, the multipartyism came, blah, 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 and again the new constitution came. So are you again saying that there is a political philosophy on it, really?
Well, you see, there is, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was one of the proponents of independence. And his only and biggest departure with his bosom friend, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, was the question of deviating from the goal of independence. For Jaramogi, he said that let us give back land to the people of Kenya for free because it is our land which the colonialists grabbed from us. For Mzee Kenyatta, he said that let the people buy land from colonialists who grabbed the land from us. That was the point of departure, and that is why Jaramogi wrote a book known as Not Yet Uhuru. And in that book, he demonstrated a lot of scenarios and factors which made him feel that Kenya was not yet totally independent. But I'll move away from Jaramogi's point of view to the concept of neo-colonization. What happens is that immediately after Second World War, must have been something between 1944 to 1948 or thereabout. We had a serious assault on the global financial market. And because of that, several countries they converged in the United States of America, a place called Bretton Woods. And Bretton Woods created two fundamental institutions, financial institutions. One is the International Monetary Fund, and the second one is the World Bank. So both the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which are products of the Bretton Woods institution meeting post the Second World War, were basically the fundamentals of economics and the fundamentals of global finance in terms of borrowing money and defining and designing monetary policy was rigged in favor of the US dollar. And for a very long time, up to date, the unfair and inequitable manner with which policies, rules and regulations which run IMF and World Bank are concerned is one of the major reasons why African countries are even struggling to pay what we call, the loans which are being extended to us. You would find that of late there has been a clamor for fair credit rating for countries which fall in what is known as the southern pole, the developing countries. So when these Western powers, the Western capitalists, the Americans and the Europeans, when they take the developing countries captive of financial liberation and independence, they are even in a position to dictate to you, either directly or indirectly, who you should elect for what position. So because of that neo-colonization, rapid economic development has never been achieved. Are you aware that Africa is the richest continent on earth in terms of natural resources? And the paradox is the richest continent on earth in terms of the availability of mineral resources is actually the poorest in terms of the living conditions. So that begs the question, then why can't Africans use their immense potential in terms of human capital, because we are a continent of over a billion people. In terms of natural resources, they argue that the DRC carbon zinc is the largest in the whole world, and the analysts argue that DRC alone, the resources in DRC alone, is enough to feed the entire Eastern and Southern Africa. Okay, so the aspects of neo-colonization prop in the following manner. One, you do elections, and elections are outrightly rigged, but they are being scripted to look like elections were not rigged, were fair, were legitimate, and the first people to send congratulatory messages are the people from the West. You take to the street to demand for accountability and electoral justice, and the first people to label you as radical, violent, and arrogant dissenting voices are people from the West. The end game is a script to ensure that their stooge in the position of power sticks there and serves their interest. Let me give you a comparative analysis. In South Africa, we have the biggest question of land reforms. Not land reforms, but actually the biggest question of squatters. The Boers are the minority in South Africa. They form less than 30% of the total population. Actually, they form less than 20% of the total population. But the same Boers who form less than 20% of the total population own more than 70% of the prime land in South Africa, which is why, that is even one of the reasons why Julius Malema's led economic freedom fighters broke away from the African National Congress, because he felt that questions to do with the, giving land to the black people, and we have something called nationalization of banks, because most banks are privatized at the hands of the Boers or the Dutch people. Then the third one was the nationalization of mines. You will find that most mines are in the hands of, cabals and Western capitalists. So then they would determine who becomes president after who. So that is the new colonization or neo-colonialism I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you so much, Brother Victor Orwa. Now that you have said there that African countries, especially Kenya, have not yet got the independence. Now, what's next, especially to the youths, to people that are there, the adults, the aged one, everybody? What's next now, or what are you planning? Because you told me there before that there's something as a student, a former student of the University of Nairobi, and also an activist. There's something that you people are planning that you see can bring the future of Kenya into a positive direction, which is, can you just explain to us?
Well, basically, what we're trying to do, we are exercising the provisions of our constitution. Let me just try to simplify. Our constitution, under the provisions of Article 1, Sub-Article 1, says that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya, and the people of Kenya can exercise that sovereignty either directly or indirectly through their democratically elected representatives. So we've been very faithful and loyal readers and followers of the Constitution. So we've figured out the manner in which our country is being run, and we've chosen to exercise our political rights as Kenyans under the provisions of Article 38, so that we now we use our sovereign power to determine and configure our political equation within the rights we enjoy under Article 38, which is why now we are saying that we have a progressive constitution which accommodates everybody and empowers everybody to at least do something to make a difference in the governance architecture of a nation. And one way of doing that is through changing the architecture of governance in whichever way. So for us, the only constitutional tool available to us is under the provisions of Article 257, because Article 257 gives us power as the people of Kenya, any of us, in our individual capacities or in our collective capacities, to propose changes to the constitution which should be realized by way of referendum. So it's on that basis that we have drafted a bill which is being a bill which is owned and propagated by Bunge la Mwananchi, and this bill is triggering a lot of radical surgery on our governance architecture. Number one, it fundamentally decentralizes money to the local unit. For instance, it proposes that instead of giving counties a minimum of 15%, counties should receive a minimum of 35%. That is number. Number two, it suggests that wards should have something called Ward Development Fund.
You continue. It means that you are bringing BBI in another style.
No, we are not bringing BBI.
So when you talk about the 15% to 35% and Ward Development Fund, BBI had the same.
Well, fine. We are not bringing BBI bill back because, as you know, the BBI question had been determined with a finality by our apex court, being the Supreme Court of Kenya. And the Supreme Court rendered its decision that insofar as the initiation of the Building Bridges Initiative Bill was concerned, it fell short of legal and constitutional threshold which are needed for it to have gone to a referendum. So for us as believers in the Constitution, that bill is dead. If whatever we are suggesting here could be similar to one or two things which are in the BBI, only two things could justify that. One, maybe it is just a question of coincidence, or two, maybe that the proponents of BBI then equally had a good reason to suggest that more resources should actually be devolved to the grassroots. Yes.
Thank you so much. So it means that in the Constitution of 2010, there are some changes you people want there.
Exactly.
Okay, which is?
Well, there are a couple. I'll list them. Fundamentally, and the one which is dearest to our hearts, is the entrenchment of Bunge la Mwananchi in the Constitution. In the Republic of South Africa, Bunge la Mwananchi exists as an extension of political governance of South Africa. In South Africa, it is called the People's Assembly, which is the English translation of Bunge la Mwananchi. So we are saying that as currently constituted, Bunge la Mwananchi at its best exists as an amorphous caucus. And at its worst, it exists as a pressure group which brings together like-minded people to engage in contemporaneous discourses without entrenchment in the Constitution. So we appreciate the fact that Bunge la Mwananchi does a plethora of critical and crucial issues, engaging patriotically, engaging with a lot of patriotism in question of public participation, sensitization, and civic education. So we are saying, if Bunge la Mwananchi does this today without entrenchment in the Constitution and without any facilitation from the public coffers, how about we entrench it so that it be part of our governance? And entrenching it will also achieve another equation, very vital. That is, it is also a way of including the common people in governance. That's number. Number two, we are saying that it is an indisputable fact that since the attainment of our autonomy as a people, we've had a leadership at the national level which has been either by design or default circumscribed to only two communities at one particular given point. We've had the highest positions being that of the president and the vice president, as it were, in the Lancaster Constitution, or the president and the deputy president as it is post promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. So we are saying that let us expand, the leadership at the national level for purposes of inclusivity. For instance, we are suggesting that we make a serious radical change from a pure presidential system to a parliamentary system with the introduction of the position of the prime minister, an executive one, and two deputies. And at the same time, he is suggesting that let us have the leader of opposition with 2 deputies being in the constitution. Why are we suggesting the position of the prime minister? If you have the position of the prime minister with 2 deputies, and you have a position of a president and a deputy, those are 5 positions. So meaning at any given point, at least 5 communities at the national level will be in leadership. And if you add that together with the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly, then you will have 7 communities moving forward. And within that context, we are suggesting that out of at least 14 cabinet secretaries, whom we now want to be called cabinet ministers to be appointed as MPs, we are suggesting that at least each community must be represented in the government either as a cabinet minister or as a permanent secretary. So we have approximately 43 tribes or thereabout. If we have 22 ministers and we have prime minister plus 2 deputies, president and deputy, if you were to give each community one, half of the communities will be represented. But then a fundamental question arises, then what now happens to the question of public wage bill? Because if we introduce the position of prime minister, it means that they will be paid. So how are we addressing the public who ask wage bill? What we are saying is very simple. A prime minister is, as under parliamentary system of governance, a prime minister is a sitting member of the National Assembly, is a sitting member of parliament. So the prime minister and the deputies shall earn their money, shall earn salaries as any other member of parliament. However, insofar as discharging their duties as prime minister and deputy prime ministers respectively, they shall only be entitled to allowances. These allowances could come in the form of traveling allowances or sitting allowances when they attend cabinet or go on official duties. So meaning there will be no extra remuneration for this position, and the same criteria applies to the leader of the position and his or her deputies. The same criteria applies to MPs who will be appointed minister. If you are an MP and for instance you are earning, let's say 700,000 shillings, you will not earn an extra money, let's say another 500,000 as a minister. The only money you will earn is your allowance when you attend cabinet meetings, your allowance when you travel on official duties per diem. So that is that aspect. Then we are introducing something also called...
Before you continue, in the Bunge la Mwananchi, when we add the Bunge la Mwananchi people in the government or in the system, do you see fund also will be used to there?
Yeah, actually, that is what we are suggesting. There is a critical principle in our constitution under the provisions of Article 10. Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 speaks to the question of national values and principles. And one of the fundamental values and principles there is the aspect of public participation. So we are saying that one of the major roles of Bunge la Mwananchi, should it be entrenched in the Constitution, is to coordinate, to organize, to direct public participation. So Parliament will only play facilitative role of ensuring that money has been allocated to Bunge la Mwananchi to conduct public participation, to do civic education, to sensitize the people on bills being generated by the government, on any other related government business being transacted or being initiated.
Okay, thank you. Now, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Should I engage my brother before we continue? So you take a rest and also he give us what you want to say. Then we'll call you back again. Okay, thank you. Of course, this is Deepex TV, ladies and gentlemen. Victor Orwa was here, and I forgot to ask the name of the initiative, but I know you will answer that. My brother, please welcome. Welcome. We'll start by your name. Maybe you will tell us who you are. Just a slight introduction. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Achola Michael Odhiambo. I am a practicing advocate and a member of the Law Society of Kenya. I litigate a lot. I am into constitutional law as well. So I also practice other areas of the law touching on civil matters, commercial as well. And I'm quite passionate about the common Mwananchi's lifestyle. Yes, we need to try and ensure that our country is a country whereby no one needs to run away. Everyone can earn a living, and everyone can sit down and say that anajivunia kuwa Mkenya. It's quite a struggle, even for us in our professional field. But you can now try and imagine what it's like for people who are not even protected within the laws of Kenya, because you see, as practicing advocates, we have our laws that protect us as practitioners. So when you think of other, watu wa boda boda, mama mboga, they struggle a lot. We see how sometimes they are harassed by kanjo officers, and some of our brothers and sisters in the transport industry. So there really is a lot to be desired in our country at the moment. And me and my brother, we are trying to see if we can bring any tangible solutions to those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Achola. Now, Mr. Achola, you know, the country of Kenya is facing the decrease in the economy. And Gen Z came there. They were saying, reject, Ruto must go, and most of the thing to change. And up to now, after them, they are saying nothing was changed by that time. So for you, this movement that you are in, I don't know the name of the initiative. I don't know if you know. You know the name? Can you tell us the...
It's basically a Bunge la Wananchi initiative. It's a popular initiative enshrined under Article 257 of the Constitution that pretty much allows us to have a say or have a voice in making a difference through the legal channel in our country.
Okay, my brother Victor talked about introducing some of the posts and maybe merging some of the posts to be one and representing each and every community, especially in the national level. What dream again do Bunge la Wananchi initiative have?
A lot, to be very honest with you. Outside of trying to reduce public wastage of resources and creating austerity measures in our public finance matters, we're also trying to see that we can try and take those resources that are being wasted and bring them down to the common wananchi. So the agenda is basically to make sure that we try and take as many different fields as possible, touching on sports, touching on matters arts, touching on matters different industries such as the acting industries that we feel like are slept on as a country, and there's still a lot that we can try and bring out of that, because you see, if we look at some of these foreign economies, the first world countries, the likes of Europe, America, they really have a lot going on. And if you do a comparative analysis with what we have here locally, even generally within Africa, it leaves a lot to be desired. So we also want to try and see if we can make sure that we educate the normal mwananchi in as far as implementation of this Bunge la Wananchi initiative is concerned. We want to make sure that it is not just, it's different from the BBI initiative, because if you look at the Supreme Court ruling, the court was keen to note that it was more of like a cosmetic initiative by the political elite. So for us, we are trying to make sure that we educate the common wananchi. We sit down with them, we talk to them, the mama mbogas, the watu wa boda boda, and even professionals, a lot of stakeholders, doctors, nurses, engineers, lawyers, journalists. We want to make sure sports people, artists, we want to make sure that we bring them on board, sit down as stakeholders, and make sure that it is a collective agenda, and we bring out something meaningful from all of it.
Thank you so much. There was a brief press brief that was done. I don't know, it was you or Victor. The two of you were there. One of my fans asked a question that let's assume, because it mentioned things like emerging some of the positions, do away with some of the positions like women rep, deputy governors, so and so. And today is talking about devolution. You know, devolution was brought, and this post of governor, the deputy governor was there, the women and rep was there. So it means you are now opposing this initiative of yours, the one called Bunge la Wananchi, is opposing the devolution of this country, or what are you trying to do? And this question will go to Victor too.
Yes. we are not really opposing. You see, in law, we usually have this thing we call jurisprudence, which is basically our legal thinking within the courts. And we usually say that every case has its own facts, every case is special, and you have to treat every case within its own special realms. So even for us with our constitution, we have to treat it in a special context. You see, sometimes you have to bring a law, and then you have to wait and implement it and see if it works. So if along the way you realize that the law is not working or the system is not working, just like any other places or industries, even in medicine, engineering, you can try something out and realize maybe it's not working, and maybe it's even disadvantaging the common mwananchi, because now you see, yes, we had a noble idea by the people who brought about the 2010 constitution, even with some of these women rep positions. But then you see, we are not really trying to take away from those positions. We are also trying to say, yes, it might be problematic, but we can still bring a different solution, which is whereby my brother was saying we can try and make sure that for these appointive and nominative positions, we make sure that youths, for instance, and persons with disabilities are factored 50-50. So we take 50% of the positions, and then we give them equally between people of the youths, that is men and women equally. And we also make sure that persons with special needs, for instance, people with disability, are also factored in. So it's not really a bad thing to just sit down and reflect. So, and then you see even the issue of public wastage. Sometimes you find that even for some of these positions, you find that they have too many seminars, they have too many traveling agendas, and all these are at the expense of the common mwananchi. So by just trying and revising some of these positions and saying maybe they can share positions. For instance, some of the solutions we were providing is the CSS and the CASs can also be sitting members of parliament, which, if you can remember, is a system that was previously in the pre-2010 constitution. And the good thing about that, you also realize, is that some of these CSS, if they are sitting members of parliament, they are also close to the common mwananchi. They understand the direct needs of the common mwananchi, as opposed to technocrats or scholars who might be sitting somewhere in a position of privilege, and not in a bad way. It's in a good way, because we're also trying to make sure that we are uplifting every single person in society. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chola. I only know Mr. Chola. Achola Michael Odhiambo. Now, Achola Michael Odhiambo, there's one last question that I want to ask, then we'll welcome our brother again, and to proceed with whatever you people are trying to do. For an initiative to start work in Kenya, there are two things must be done. Number one, referendum. Number two, maybe collecting signatures and the views from the people. Have you already started this, or you just have the plan, but you have not brought it in the broad-based light?
Definitely, we've engaged people, both on a personal level and on a more public level in different forums, because for us to even come up with this particular agenda, we've definitely had people complaining, we've definitely had the cries of people, we've definitely had the concerns, we've definitely taken the different views and perspectives of people. So it's not just a cosmetic academic idea that we just sat somewhere and thought, you know what, maybe we can try and bring these solutions. Of course, individually, we've also tried to observe based on the current national issues and affairs taking place in the country, because even outside of discussing, sometimes we are also, part of the mwananchi. We sit with mama mboga, ukikatiwa mboga pale, you hear her lamenting about a particular issue, mambo ya school fees. The boda guys akikubeba na kupeleka mahali haraka haraka, you also hear them complaining about issues like unemployment or, rising VAT, and how that affects products like fuel, and of course, by extension, cost of living, and so they are basically lamenting about a lot. And not them as well, even professionals. sometimes you even hear business people, hakuna biashara, people are trying their level best to take up loans. Banks are giving out loans, but you see, there's no winner at the end of the day, because yes, you're giving out loans, but this person is still going to set up a business, but the business is not really going to take off. So at the end of the day, no business is progressing, and the banks are also unable to even get back their resources plus the interest that they were targeting, So there are so many issues. Yes, we have reflected individually, but we've also done our engagement with people, and we understand the issues that are facing the common mwananchi.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Achola. Dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, this is two men who want to fight for the freedom and the independence of this country, or the independence of this nation. This is Deepex TV, where we cure your boredom. And after this short break, we are coming back with more. My name is Brian Ogoma, and of course, we cure your boredom. Thank you so much. We are back again, ladies and gentlemen. I have one of the greatest leaders of Bunge la Mwananchi bill. He was trying to say some of the things which are very, very interesting, and of course can either help the nation of Kenya in either of the way. But mambo bado, we'll have to know more about it. Mr. Victor Roa, welcome again. Talking of Bunge la Mwananchi bill, we had bills like BBI was there, and again now we have this one here. Now, what's the difference between this and the current BBI and the former BBI?
Thank you so much. The difference is huge, in the sense that the primary objective of Bunge la Mwananchi bill is to, one, give what we call financial inclusion to the common people. That is number one. Then number two, it gives what we call financial independence to the common people. In which way? We are suggesting, for instance, that joblessness is a very big question in Kenya today. And we have so many graduates around, people who are unemployed. So we are saying that let us have a fund known as self-employment fund, entrenched in the constitution, but decentralized in all constituencies, the way CDF is being decentralized. Now, when this fund goes to, let's say, Vita constituency, for example, or even Super North constituency, for example, it should be managed by the local people. And the local people we are suggesting are two sets of people. The first set of people is the youth. That is the people who are between the ages of 18 to 35. Then the second set of people we are suggesting are the younger generation, who are not necessarily the youth. They're the people who are between the ages of 36 to 49. So we are saying that a committee, a self-employment committee fund at the constituency level must be constituted of the youth and the people who are between the ages of 36 to 49 on a 50-50 basis. So they will determine the manner of disbursement according to an act of parliament which will be enacted to give effect to that particular fund. They will also be determining the methodology of disbursement, methodology of accountability, and which projects are to be done in certain areas. Meaning, for instance, problems which are in Bondo constituency are not necessarily the problems which are in Makadara constituency. So that is why we are saying, let the local people down there manage this fund. And we are insisting on the youth and the people between the ages of 36 to 49 because they are the biggest victims of exclusion, that is economic exclusion and political exclusion, and they're also the biggest casualties of the ravages of iniquity and marginalization. That's number. Number two, we are suggesting that certain funds be merged. Number one is the Youth Enterprise Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, Uwezo Fund, and the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, known as GAF, which is given to the women. So we are saying that let National Government Affirmative Action Fund exist, and let Uwezo Fund exist, as well as Women and Youth Enterprise Fund, but merge them so that then that kitty is bigger financially than it is today. Then after merging them, decentralize the merged funds to each constituency, the way, to each of the existing constituencies, the way national government development, national government constituency development fund is being disbursed. So once you disburse this money, we don't want it to be in the hands of elected leaders. We want this money to be in the hands of the local people. That is the essence of achieving financial inclusion and financial independence through the principle of decentralization. Again, when decentralizing it, how will it be managed? It will be managed by having a committee per constituency, the way we have the national government constituency development fund committees. And these committees shall consist of two sets of people. Again, those who are aged between the ages of 18 to 35, those who are aged between the ages of 36 to 49. Why?
So they choose a representative.
Yes, because even the composition of CDF today is basically local. The only thing is that CDF, the composition is basically by local people, but we have an MP as an overseer. So what we are saying, with the funds we are suggesting, the self-employment fund, and the amalgamation of Uwezo, Youth Enterprise Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, and GAF, is that amalgamate so that that basket balloons financially, and let decentralize it to all constituencies, but let the management be by the people, meaning the local people will be electing members to be the committee, to constitute a committee overseeing the same.
So member of parliament should not have an upper hand on it.
A member of parliament will totally be outside the equation of self-employment fund and the funds which we are suggesting to be merged. You see, for instance, let me give you a very typical example. We have school management committees. School management committees, they conduct the elections locally and they elect people they want. So what we are saying is that, of course, parliament will have a role in enacting and enabling legislation to give effect to this fund, how it will be run, the penalties and whatnot. But its management and disbursement must be by the local people.
Imagine the funds, for women funds, Uwezo fund, GAF fund, all of them, imagine them in one capacity. It means that some of the people will lose their job, especially women rep now. Maybe will not, she will not get anything to.
Well, you see, the existence of the positions of women representatives were part of the broader question, the broader answer to the question of gender inequality. So women reps existed, and by the way, for your information, women reps are not supposed to exist for eternity. There is a timeline within which those positions will lapse, because they are affirmative action. They were just to try to prop up women into leadership, so that we could beat what we call, these patriarchal stereotypes and cultural bias of the society. So we are not saying that we are denying anybody a job. That is not what we are saying. What we are saying is that we are restructuring our governance architecture to conform to the prevailing challenges and needs of our society. And one of the prevailing challenges and needs of our society is political and economic exclusion of two serious demographics: the ages of 18 to 35, the youth; the ages of 36 to 49. We want them not just to be used as tools for voting in leaders, but being excluded after elections, but we want them to be at the epicenter of determining the trajectory which their political governance takes, but equally having a central say on the financial tangent that their resources shall take. That is what we are saying.
Mr. Victor, Mr. Rua Victor, let's say that the people of Kenya reject the bill. What next will come to your mind as a leader of Bunge la Mwananchi bill?
I want to tell you without batting my eyelid that this bill is very popular among the people, and I can tell you that it will be endorsed by at least a minimum of 65%. The question of rejection doesn't even exist in the figment of our imagination, because it is a pro-people propagated, it is a people center, it's people-centric in terms of the historical biases historical imbalances, historical marginalization, and injustices it tries to suggest. So, as we speak, for us, the focus is to engage the people, conduct civic education, get their views, do public participation, so that whatever we have suggested can be distilled into even a much better document than it is. So the question of rejection is off the table for us. Yes.
Most of youth are rejecting maybe the fifth regime of governance of this country. So they are coming with most of the things today. They are striking. They are doing things in the internet. Maybe you people, you brought this Bunge la Mwananchi bill because of whatever is going on. You want to take something from the you see government is not working, so you are opposing the government. That's why you brought this bill, or it was something that you people planned before?
Well, first of all, everyone has a duty to oppose any existing government if it is failing on its primary mandate. And one of the ways of opposing the government is not necessarily through what we are trying to do. You know, what we are trying to do is contemplated in the Constitution. And in 2010, when we promulgated our Constitution on 20th of August 2010, then nobody knew that nearly 14, 15 years later, there will be a government in Kenya known as Kenya Kwanza, or whatever formation of broad-based. So basically, what we are doing is that our initiative is responding to the prevailing circumstantial connivances of inequities, inequality, unfair distribution of resources, and generally, discrimination largely, even in terms of public service support and even in terms of service delivery. So for us, it is to redefine and to re-engineer the government, the governance matrix of our country, so that everyone has an equal opportunity platform to be anything. And when I say everyone, I mean people from diverse, walks of life, without paying regard to political, religious persuasion, or even tribal inclination.
So this a project, Bunge la Mwananchi bill is a project of someone, or just a project of youths?
Bunge la Mwananchi.
Before you respond to that, you people, you just talk about youth. So it means a project of youths, or a project of someone that is trying to bring youths on board?
Bunge la Mwananchi is a monumentous and spontaneous project whose time has come. It is an initiative for and by the people. It has emerged spontaneously. It has come when Kenya is at a critical juncture in terms of economic and political issues. So what basically we are trying to do, we are not prescribing, we've diagnosed a disease and we've observed that the disease exists in the manner in which our governance structure is premised. So we are not treating symptoms. We are treating the disease, and the disease is to re-engineer the constitutional model so that, as I said, it corresponds to the needs of the people. The needs of the people change periodically as generations emerge. So we are not, the people are not anybody's project. We are not sponsored by anybody, whether that person is opposing or supporting the government. We have come up on our own, and to confirm to you that we have come up on our own, one of the things we are doing is our entrenchment in the Constitution, and two, to ensure that a larger chunk of money is controlled by the people. Yes. So it is basically a people's initiative.
For a bill or something like this to happen, you have to have at least a finance. How do you people manage to fund yourself or fund the Bunge la Mwananchi bill?
Well, at this point in time, we are more focused on doing what we feel quite significant to this course. One of them is to engage the public, to get their views, to conduct public sensitization, to conduct public participation and to engage them so that we can have a fair and a better product. Then when it comes to the question of funding the entire initiative, that will come at a later stage. And insofar as funding will be in fact, we won't even be interested in being part of the resources which is propelling this agenda. In fact, we would even be suggesting at a later date that a lean finance committee of reputable characters in our country, maybe say the leadership, for instance, of ISPAC, Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, maybe say the leadership of, Institute of Economic Affairs led by Kwame Owino, maybe say the leadership of LSK, and people who have impeccable, solid character will come on board at a later stage to form part of our fundraising committee so that we have accountability and we have transparency insofar as expending our finances are concerned.
Thank you so much. Lastly, just in 1 minute, just 1.5 minute, please, can you just talk about now the situation in the state or the governance of the country?
Well, so far, the country, the current administration has not done as per the expectation. It has fallen short of the expectation. But when we analyze the current administration, we must also be alive to the fact that it inherited a lot of historical mistakes from the previous administration. For example, when you talk of public debt, pending bills, and even assassinations and so on and abductions, we have to do even a comparative analysis with the previous. But what I can say in a nutshell is this: that the current administration has done very little to please the people, but it has demonstrated that it can do better. So if I were to rate them, I could say that so far it hasn't performed above average, and it must pull up its socks so that service delivery, fairness, and fundamental rights and freedoms are enjoyed by the people.
Thank you. Lastly, on Kenyan administration, what were you expecting from them, according to maybe in terms of governance? What were you expecting from the government of Kenya Kwanza?
Well, this I was expecting the worst from the current administration, which is why I didn't vote for the current government. I voted for Baba and ODM because I didn't believe in the capability of this government to perform better. However, having formed the broad-based government, let us give them the benefit of doubt. Things could change, because remember, they say that it's only a fool who doesn't change his or her mind. So given that they are now, enjoying a wealth of experience and wisdom from personalities like His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, maybe they could get wise counsel on how to run the country, and maybe things could change for better. But for the first 2 years, I didn't expect them to do much. But currently, I expect them to do better, because in the cabinet, some of the people who are sitting in the cabinet are Batlu-hardened reform advocates in the status of CPA John Mbadi, the militant pro-reform advocates like Opiyo Wandayi. So we expect them to inject the reforms ideology and the change movement philosophy in the government, so that what they were advocating for in the ODM manifesto and even in the pro-reform movement can be achieved. So my message is that there could be some kind of hope. So let's see how the finance bill comes through and how 2025 pans out to be. But all is not lost. let's be optimistic.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Mr. Orua Victor, who is a co-founder of Bunge la Mwananchi Bill. I want you to tell my fans your last word about this Bunge la Mwananchi Bill. Tell them something slightly, just within 30 seconds, please.
I want to tell them, for those who voted for Baba but regretted because he didn't sit on the seat, and for those who voted for the current administration but are regretting because the current administration has performed below their expectation, my message is simple, that the panacea to your predicament is by supporting the Bunge la Mwananchi Bill. The Bunge la Mwananchi Bill gives you financial inclusion, it gives you financial independence, but most importantly, it incorporates the youth and the younger people in leadership. Remember, even what we are proposing in the National Assembly and the Senate, that all the nominees must be within those brackets of the youth and those who are between 36 to 49. And even the county executive committee members to be appointed from MCS. We are suggesting that 50% must be the youth. And most importantly, we are suggesting a 50-50 gender equality on all nominative and appointive positions. So there is light at the end of the tunnel for the people of Kenya.
Can someone support the bill?
Well, one way of supporting the bill is by engaging your locals in sensitization. So you tell them the content of the bill, you simplify for them to understand, and you make them understand why you want them to support the initiative. So the most important thing for us now is popularization of the bill so that the common person at the grassroots level identifies with its mission and vision. That is all we are asking for. For now, we are not even asking for money. All we want you to do, popularize. First of all, understand the bill, popularize the bill.
Wow. Mr. Derek, can you allow me to just ask the last question, please? Let's assume, Mr. Orua, that through this bill, it comes to a point that it will be known, and then some of the government official or anybody who wants some political gain come through and say, I want you to support this bill of Bunge la Mwananchi Bill, but in one condition, it has to favor me. Will you people be in a position maybe to support, or you will reject? Just in answer of yes or no.
Ask your question again.
Let's assume there is one of the government official or anybody who wants something in the political seat there, and they want to use maybe the Bunge la Mwananchi Bill to gain his political gain. Will you people allow him to be there or no?
No. This is a pro-people's initiative.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, this is Deepex TV, where we cure your boredom. My name is Brian Ogoma, and of course, we had some of the founder members of Bunge la Mwananchi Bill. We will bring them on board so that they explain to us. I know most of you people, maybe you are not understanding, or maybe you have got something. But to me, we'll bring them again so that they give us now the original Bunge la Mwananchi Bill. How will it help the people of Kenya, and how will it help the government, also the administration, government of the Republic of Kenya. This is Deepex TV, where ikiwa your bottom follow us on TikTok at Deepex TV 1, and of course Facebook Deepex TV, Instagram Deepex TV, without forgetting YouTube at Deepex TV. Thank you so much.